So, welcome to the Kitty Talks podcast. This is my first solo cast of the new year. As I speak to you, we are preparing to go to India. My husband and I are taking his children to Goa for 2 weeks, and we're going to Mumbai as well, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. So I have been to India before, and it is a massive, massive culture shock, but it's an incredible culture shock. And essentially, you get such an overload for your senses. So I'm very excited. We are taking down all the Christmas decorations today, and we are packing really, really lightly because we're only allowed to take 15 kgs with us on the plane because we've got internal flights. So that in itself is a challenge. But I'm very excited going to the motherland. But today I want to talk to you about mobile phones, grounding, and 5G. So let's get straight into this juicy topic. The things I'm going to share with you today, it's really important that you start to share with other people. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, there's lots of truth bombs that get basically shared on this podcast. And this is a particular truth bomb which you need to share with others. I always talk about the fact that we are at a critical point in humanity's existence, and there's some things happening on this planet which are quite disgusting, actually. And 5G, the advent of 5G, is something that we all need to be aware of and basically to speak up about and to essentially use our power to stop it coming into play. But before we talk about 5G, I want to talk to you about grounding. So what I'm about to tell you may be old news, or it may be very, very eye-opening. I talk to a lot of people, actually, myself included, like my kind of story around groundings. I never even knew it existed, to be honest with you, until I suppose my mid-30s. And I request you have a childlike innocence around this episode and stay open because you're going to learn lots. In my 20s, I regularly used to feel, now see if you relate to this, because I think, I was talking to a really nice friend of mine the other day and she was saying, oh my God, I never even realized that this was true. So in my 20s, I used to get really in my head and I used to feel very dizzy and almost feel disconnected, and I found it difficult to concentrate, and I'd feel like a bit woozy, and I would feel a little bit like all over the place, and I'd feel really, really disconnected from my body. And I just thought it was just me. And I didn't really know why it was happening. And this was when I was suffering with quite bad depression. And I thought it was just one of these weird things that I was going through. And it would happen quite regularly until my 30s when I understood it was because I wasn't grounded. So what is grounded? Well, first of all, can you relate to that? Do you have patches and periods where you feel really, really almost dizzy and you can't concentrate and you don't really know what's going on and it all feels a bit weird? The chances are you are not grounded. So what is grounding? Well, to start with, I want to explain to you how the earth works and how our human energy fields work. You may or may not have seen something called the torus. I'm going to post some pictures on my Instagram story when this episode goes live. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, jump over to Instagram and have a look. But essentially, humans have an electromagnetic field that essentially we are, how do I describe this? So we have our own energy field. And a torus essentially is what they call that energy field because the energy goes up through our chakras, out the top of our head and around. And it almost looks like a mushroom, actually, is the sort of shape that it looks. And And we need to be grounded for us to work properly because we have our own electromagnetic field. Now, when you do things like energy work, so when you do things like Qigong, when you do things like meditation, what you're doing is you're charging up your energy field. So your energy becomes very, very strong and your energy field becomes much bigger. It would reach much further. So the easiest way to demonstrate this is I remember going and seeing my husband's meditation teacher, and he showed with dowsing rods, he was measuring people's energy fields. So a dowsing rod basically is how they used to douse for water, but it also can measure energy. So they use them to douse properties, or in this case, he was measuring a human's energy field. Now, what he demonstrated, which was absolutely fascinating and really important for us to know and understand, is humans have energy fields. So he showed that this gentleman who he measured had been doing Qigong all day. Now, Qigong will move your energy through your body and around your body, and essentially it will build up your energy field. So he took his dowsing rods and he walked towards the gentleman, and he must have been probably about 20 feet away. And the dowsing rods opened. And of course, this is because they hit his energy field. And it was showing us that actually this gentleman's energy field was really quite large. And then he measured somebody who hadn't been in the Qigong class all day and showed their energy field. And it was much, much smaller, probably about 3 meters. So what we could see between the two was the fact that the gentleman who had spent the day doing Qigong and energy work had built up his energy field. And of course, his energy field was much stronger. Now, if you imagine, we all have energy fields. So the easiest way to explain what grounding is imagine a plug without it being earthed. So if you think about the different wires, but one of them is the brown one, and one of them, that's the earthing. So if you didn't earth electricity, it would blow fuses left, right, and center because there would be too much electricity running through without it being grounded. So essentially, humans are like plugs. We need to be earthed so we can take the excess energy that we have so it can be earthed by Mother Nature. So when you're grounded, any excess energy that is in your system can be neutralized by Mother Earth. Now, what's important and interesting about this is what we don't know, or what we're not told, and what we maybe don't put two and two together unless we've come across this work or if our consciousness has shifted, is when we use things like phones and laptops, they shut down our energy field because they have their own EMFs. And that charges us up with electromagnetic, almost radiation. So those times, those periods where you've experienced being in your head, a little bit fuzzy. I went and grounded myself before doing this solocast because obviously I'm sitting right next to a computer and I'm sitting right next to a laptop. And actually I have a grounding mat on my computer, which helps me keep grounded. But imagine all those times you felt a little bit in your head and you felt disconnected. The chances are you haven't been grounded. Now, it's so simple to ground yourself, but we have been walking around in rubber-based soles on our shoes since the 70s. So if you're wearing a pair of sneakers, most shoes nowadays are rubber-based, you're not grounded. There is something in between you and Mother Earth, which is stopping you being earthed and stopping you being grounded. So really, really important that you guys understand this. It's so simple when you know it, but that's the whole thing about consciousness. It's so simple when you know it, but it's becoming more aware of it. So for example, if you're using a computer, I want you to start thinking about everything having almost like a light around it, which is the electromagnetic field. So humans have electromagnetic field around them, and then computers and phones have an electromagnetic field as well. So when the two come into contact with each other, they shut each other down. So children are spending more and more time on their phones, and adults are spending more and more time on their phones, and it's really bad for our mental health and for our physical health. Now, going back to Matt's meditation teacher, he then demonstrated what happens to an individual when they have a phone that is on them. So remember we talked about the fact that a person who'd been doing energy work had a 20-meter energy field. A person who had done no energy work that day had about a 3-meter energy field. And then he also demonstrated with the dowsing rods, somebody who had a mobile phone on them that was on, what happened. And essentially the dowsing rods didn't open at all, because that phone shut down that human being's energy field completely. So something to be aware of. As soon as you use a mobile phone, you are interrupting your own energy field. And why does this impact you? Like, why does it matter? Basically, why is that even important? Well, if you're sensitive to energy, it's really, really important. And I believe that the more you wake up, the more that you become conscious, the more sensitive to energy that you will get. Like, I find now that I can't even sleep in places that haven't been doused because my energy is so sensitive. But we all have different energy types. So, there are earth energy types who are really, really sensitive to people's energy. So practices like yoga and meditation naturally ground us, but it's really important that we have a conscious awareness around this, because when these when our energy fields get interrupted and get shut down, it can start to have physical impact and it can start to have negative impact on us. So let's talk about mobile phones and your health. Right, if you think about how many people in the world have mobile phones, it's incredible. Everybody is on their phones now. And of course, what they haven't told us is the impact of this shutting down of our energy field. Essentially, our energy fields are being disruptive. Now, what's happening across the planet, which is interesting, is you used to be able to sort of feel energy. So you'd go to almost like a graveyard, or you'd go to somewhere that was very historical, which had loads of battles, or you can go somewhere that's had a lot of history and you would be able to feel that energy, because the planet essentially had absorbed that energy from what had happened. But what's starting to happen, because we've got bloody mobile phone masts everywhere, and soon to be 5G mobile phone mast everywhere, is all of that history and all of that energetic history we're losing because it's getting shut down. And it's shutting us down too. And the thing about it is that they really don't know the impact on the body, because they haven't really studied mobile phone usage long term. Because this has only been, I think mobile phones came in when I was about 25. So we've only really had about 15 years worth of mobile phones. So they don't know the long-term effects of mobile phones yet. And the thing I liken mobile phones to is smoking and cancer. In my grandmother's day, everybody smoked. It was very cool. Everybody had a phone. Sorry, everybody had a phone. Everybody had a cigarette in their hand. And they really didn't know the impact of smoking. It was just cool. Now, if you think about 40, 50 years later, we all know smoking causes cancer. We all know the negative impacts of smoking. But this is the thing I liken it to, is what is happening with mobile phones now. Because mobile phones are so widely accepted, but no one understands the impact and what is happening. Now, if you've aware at all, you've probably seen some of the photographs, and I'll put some of these on my Instagram stories, so come over and have a look. But you can see the impact of a mobile phone when it's put next to the ear. They've studied brains. And again, essentially, you're getting radiation right near your head and right near your brain. Now, humans at least have fully formed brains, but what is happening is more and more people are parenting by mobile phone. Now, children don't have fully formed brains, so the impact on them is going to be even more. So, a couple of things that you can do just to minimize your impact is please don't hold a mobile phone right next to your ear. That's horrendous because it's radiation, and essentially radiation causes cancer. So please don't do that. If you're going to use a phone, put it on. What is the word I'm looking for? Put it on microphone. Put it on speakerphone. That's at least a little bit better because it's still shutting down your energy field, but the radiation's not right close to your head. Use a headset if you're going to use a mobile phone, and don't use a wireless headset because they're horrendous as well. Those little tiny things that you see people have right next to their ear, right next to their brains. No, awful idea. If you're going to use a headset, make sure you just use a classic old-fashioned headset, which is a microphone and it plugs into your phone. A really good story that demonstrates what the use of a mobile phone can do is a really good friend of mine who works in the city, and he was a very smart gentleman. He's kind of works right in the city of London, and he always used to wear three-piece suits to work. So beautifully dressed, blue three-piece suit. He'd have a waistcoat, he'd have, jacket and trousers. And his go-to was to always put his mobile phone in his pocket of his suit. But of course, it was right close next to his body. Now, he probably did this for about 3 months, new suit, put his phone in his pocket, didn't even really think about it. But he started to get and suffer with a pain in almost like his upper stomach. And he couldn't work out where it was coming from. And slowly but surely, I think somebody else actually put it together that it was his mobile phone being so close next to his skin that was starting to cause him problems. So we really don't know the impact of mobile phones and 4G technology on our brains, on our mental health. And full well, actually, we're not stupid. Full well if you spend the whole day in front of a computer, you come off and you feel wired and you feel disconnected and you feel all over the place. That is because your energy field has been interrupted probably for hours on end. So simple things that you can do, I would recommend that you have a grounding practice. Every human being needs to be grounded, children, adults. So I tend to ground myself just on a regular basis. I do get some people to do it when they're brushing their teeth. Wherever possible, try and walk around with no shoes and socks on because that's really good for you. But just be conscious and aware the next time that you get really in your head that essentially you're probably not grounded. And then just become aware that every time you use your mobile phone or every time that you go and sit by a computer, you have interrupted your own energy field. So there's lots of scientific reports out there that demonstrate the harm to human health from the electromagnetic fields, the EMFs that come from phones. So the effects include things like increased risk of cancer, increased cellular stress, lots more harmful free radicals, genetic damages, structural and functional changes to the reproductive system. All of these EMFs are effectively making us infertile. Learning and memory deficits. Imagine all the children. Whenever I see, I know, I don't have children, so I know obviously sometimes you just want your child to be quiet and you give them the phone. Please think about what you're doing to that child. Their brains are not fully formed, so they're even more delicate than we are. And essentially, it can cause memory deficit, behavioral problems, neurological disorders, headaches, and it really generally affects our well-being. So please be mindful of when you're using technology. And obviously nowadays we all have to use technology. It's become such a way of life. But become conscious, become aware that when you use your phone, make sure you go and ground yourself afterwards and just sort of think about cleansing your energy field. The thing that you can do with your mobile phone is have it on airplane mode, pretty much all of the time. And then only take it off airplane mode when you actually need to use it. And this will limit the amount of radiation that you're actually getting. So that's just a little heads up on grounding, on EMFs from mobile phones and from technology. But I want to talk about 5G. We are being sold, oh my God, amazing, you're going to have 5G, you're going to be able to be connected everywhere, like this is the best thing since sliced bread. Don't fall for it. Please don't fall for it. Please do your own investigation. If you're listening to this, please, again, don't just take my word for this. I ask and I request that you're out there and that you are checking these things out for yourself. 5G has been sold to us as the best thing since sliced bread, but they really haven't tested it. And the interesting thing for me is they haven't tested 5G, but also it's uninsurable. None of the big insurance companies are willing to underwrite the mobile phone companies. Like, please go and check this out for yourself. But what does that tell you? That tells you that 5G is not safe. There are hundreds of thousands of doctors, scientists, and healthcare professionals worldwide who have recently issued urgent appeals to stop the rollout of 5G on public health. There are massive potential hazards for human health and the environment. And essentially, we haven't tested 5G correctly. Now, for me, 5G is much more about control and money. If there is 5G rolled out in the different countries, whoever is effectively selling that is earning a huge amount of money. But 5G will dramatically increase the general public's daily exposure to radio frequency and EMFs. And it hasn't been safely tested. Research shows that biological effects of the level of wireless exposures seriously impacts humans, bees, trees, and wildlife. Now, I have seen pictures on the internet of dead birds just literally all over the place. And this is because they're coming into contact with the 5G technology. I have seen pictures on the internet where there's a 5G antenna and one side of a tree is completely eroded because it's exposed to the 5G antenna. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about this, I urge you to go onto Facebook. Not only share this episode with your friends, so more and more people can find out about this, but also there is a group on Facebook called Stop 5G. Now, there's Stop 5G UK, and I'm sure there's lots of different groups depending on which country you're in. But please go and join Stop 5G UK. There's about 26,000 members. I've been in this group for the last year watching what's happening. And it's really important that that group gets bigger. It's 26,000 members at the moment, but we need to spread the awareness. Now, you might find that this is coming to you very, very soon, actually, in your local district. I know that they're looking to roll it out in places like Southampton. I think it's already been rolled out in places like Manchester and quite a lot of the big cities up in the north of the country. So it's really important that we as individuals start to sign petitions, start to stop these rollouts. And there is actually a protest happening in the UK at the end of this month on the 25th of January. And again, I'm going to put some details in the show notes so that you can find out about this. Now, there are lots of county councils who are standing to stop rolling this out. So I know Kerry County Council in Ireland has voted now to stop it being rolled out in this year. I've seen down in Devon, there's sort of individual counties that have stopped rolling this out. But the more we spread this information, the better. So this is kind of like the biggest human experiment that we have faced for a long, long time. So I know Totnes in Devon, they banned the rollout of 5G. But it's interesting because if you look at the news, of course, they're not telling us anything about this. It's being kept very, very hush-hush. This is very typical of the UK news system, completely corrupt. It's, we are told and seen what they want us to see. So really important that us as individuals stop this being rolled out. So I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you know about 5G? Apparently O2 has launched it in Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, Liverpool and Derby already. But interestingly, they haven't rolled it out in Slough, where the company is based. That's so fascinating, isn't it? There's lots of petitions going around at the moment to get the government to stop the advent of 5G. But interestingly, I know a lot of the petitions got taken down because they were saying that they won't be looking at anything to do with 5G because of the general election. So again, it's really important that now the general election is done, that we get back on the case and we raise awareness of 5G. So I just want to thank you for listening. I know it's been a bit of a depressing episode this week, but so important. Like, I was thinking about this the other day. I saw a picture. Actually, a friend sent me a clip of a koala. And this poor koala obviously was caught up in the bushfires in Australia. And this beautiful koala was like so thirsty. He was up close and personal with a human being. They were cyclists. So they stopped on the road with this koala and they were giving it water. And this poor koala was just, absolutely gasping because it had been in the fires. And it was incredible and moving and so sad at the same time. And I suppose why I share that with you is we're going into 2020. I have been incredibly upbeat about what is possible for this next decade. I feel like there's a huge consciousness shift happening on the planet. But I also am fully aware that there is going to be some dark times, looking at the impact on the animals of what is happening on our planet. These poor animals, they have nothing to do with what we've been up to, and they're getting the impact of global warming. And my request is that if you listen to this podcast, I'm going to do everything in my power to raise awareness and consciousness if you're listening. Anything I find out about that I know that you guys need to hear, I'm going to be doing episodes like this. My request back to you is that you share them because time's running out, being completely honest and open with you. And we need to stick together. The only thing we can do as human beings and as individuals is use our own power, So this is where hopefully social media will come into its own because we can share things, we can spread things. And, I am a huge believer in we get what we focus on. If you listen to my podcast, you know that I truly believe we create our own realities. Now, the next 10 years, we are going to see some good things and some bad things. But we as human beings and as conscious creators need to focus on where we want to go. So yes, this shit is going to happen. Yes, there's going to be some horrendous things happening. But we as individuals need to create our own heaven on earth, have our own strong, compelling vision for our lives that we focus on that will lift up humanity. Because we could go either way. And if you get sucked into and drawn into the negativity, and if you don't use your personal power in a positive way, then there will be implications. So if you're listening to this episode, please share it. Please join the 5G group. Please have a look at the protest on the 25th of January. And please focus on your own vision for your life. And now's the time to do the work. Now's the time for you to realize that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Now's the time to know that you are powerful, to step into your personal sovereignty. So thank you for listening. I look forward to hearing your comments, your feedback. What are your thoughts on 5G? You are all wonderful and incredible, and we've got this. As much as this episode was quite depressing, I do believe that we focus on our own human power and potential, we will come through this. You know, I'm a student of Dharma, and Dharma literally says that when we wake enough people up to their higher purpose, we can heal the planet. The reason I do what I do with Dharma and getting people to uncover their purpose is because effectively I'm waking them up. They're stepping into their personal sovereignty and they're making a difference on the planet. And if we get enough people to do that, we can shift the consciousness of this planet. So much love to you, my friends. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for sharing. If you're not already, please come and find me on Instagram and post a comment about your thoughts of this episode. Love to you all, and I will see you next week with another amazing guest. This podcast was sponsored by my Do Your Dharma course. Create a life so good that you pinch yourself. This 8-week online course demystifies Dharma and shows you how to tune in to why you're really here. Go to www.kittytalks.com/do your Dharma.